Okay, well, welcome to tonight's webinar. This night's webinar is on citations, and so I'm going to be sharing a PowerPoint here for you. Okay. So as far as citations go, we want to make sure that when we're doing our writing or doing a project or working on something, we want to make sure that we give our citations correctly so that you're giving credit to the person whose ideas you're using. So I'm just going to run through some citations that are going to be pretty common for you in your work, and then I'll take questions afterward, or Erin can shout them out to me as I'm doing this because I can't see my chat window right now. So a lot of you might use an online encyclopedia or a website, and I'm going to make my mouse a little bit brighter. There we go. So you might be using an online encyclopedia or a website for some information. So you're going to want to find a quote that you'd like to use from a reputable online source. Wikipedia is not considered a reputable academic source. It is great for background information and things like very basic information, but I would recommend anything you're going to use in your research papers to not come from Wikipedia, especially if it's like an important detail about something. So I found this article on silkworms from the Britannica.com, which is a very reputable dictionary. And so the quote that I'm using is, "The carbon reinforced silk is able to withstand 50% more stress than traditional silk and is capable of conducting electricity." Rogers, 2016. And that R should be capitalized, actually. So make sure you use quotation marks around your quote if you're using it word for word. And then use the parenthetical notation, last name and the year. A lot of times websites don't have page numbers, so I have not included a page number in this parenthetical notation. But if you do have a page number available to you, make sure you use that if you're quoting from something directly. And then you cite the source in your bibliography using APA format. So it's Rogers K, 2016, October 11. It's when I pulled this off of the website, or when it was written, I'm sorry. And then the title of the article, where I got it from, and the website that it came from also. Okay, another citation that you're probably going to be using a lot is from a book, like from your textbook or from another book that you're using in class. And so if you find useful information from the book, you're going to want to quote or copy anything that you use word for word and make sure it's in those quotation marks. And then in this case, the parenthetical notation has the last name, the year it was published, and the page number that I took the quote from, so that everyone knows what page it came from, your professor can check and see, and that kind of thing. If you paraphrase or sum up information in your own words, use the parenthetical notation at the end of your thought. And then you don't need to use a page number if you're paraphrasing. If it's a direct quote, you put the page number. If it's just an idea that you're paraphrasing, don't include the page number. But I would caution you, if you are using information from another place and you're not sure whether you should paraphrase it or quote it, always quote it and then put the page number in. That's the safest way to make sure that you're not plagiarizing. And then if you want to cite it also in a different way, you can put it in, you can introduce it in the text, say, according to Bile, 2014, Baker Bookhouse bought many companies in many locations over the years, making their reach in the Christian publishing world global. So that wasn't a quote from the book, so I don't have to put it in quotation marks, but I did get the information from the book, so you can do the author and just the year in parentheses. But whichever way you're comfortable doing it, this way, the common parenthetical notation, or this way, either way is correct in APA. And then always remember to cite it in your bibliography. Now, the text that I'm using in this PowerPoint presentation is not Times New Roman, so make sure that you're using Times New Roman when you're writing your papers, but this is just a little easier to read online. So, Another one that you're going to use pretty often is a periodical or journal article, which comes from the online databases that we provide to you from the library website. So find pertinent information from a periodical, such as the ATLA database or the ProQuest database, or even ERIC, the Educational Resource Database. All of those are available on the library website, and they provide reputable academic resources for you to use in your research. So again, I'm just going to go over this quickly because you use the quotation marks if you quote. Make sure that you do last name, the year it was published, and the page number. And then if you paraphrase something, you only have to use the last name and the year it was published. Oops. And then cite it in your references page according to the APA citation style. And you can find those in your Diana Hacker, oh my goodness, little booklet that they give you to help you with your citations, or the APA manual, or the OWL at Purdue website, which is a really good resource for APA and citation styles. And then you can also use film if you're interested in using a quote or a catchy line, like especially to grab your reader's attention, which I like to do in the introduction. So you can start an introduction of your paper with like a catchy quote from a film, and then you introduce it in text, and then you quote it if you, especially if you take it word for word, which in most films for this purpose, you're probably going to do word for word. So you use the quotation marks, and then it's the director's last name and the year it was published. And yes, and even if you are quoting something, especially when it comes to film, you need to leave the grammar incorrect. Like for instance, in a research paper, you wouldn't write gotta because that's slang. You would say going to, but since you're quoting it from the film, you're going to leave the incorrect grammar, and you're going to leave any incorrect syntax or whatever, because it's a direct quote. So don't correct it, even if it's hard sometimes to leave it uncorrected. But if it's a direct quote, for sure, don't correct the grammar. You got to leave it in. And then cite the work in your references page according to the film. And these producer and director need to go in there. The year it was made, the title, you put that it's a motion picture, where it was published, and who published it. So it's kind of like a book, but it is a little bit different just because it is a film. And then another one you're going to use a lot in your papers is the Bible, and maybe other sacred texts if you're, for instance, comparing the Bible to the Quran, or using just the Torah, which has sometimes different ways of marking things out than the Bible does. So when you do that, you use, like the quote, you say, "Let not steadfast love and faithfulness forsake you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart." Quotation marks on either side of the quote. Parenthetical notation, it's from Proverbs 3:3, and you write out the version, so English Standard Version. Don't put ESV, you're going to write out the whole version. So it's New International Version or American Standard Version. So whichever version that you use, make sure that you write it out. So the format is quote, book chapter number and verse number, and then the version written all out. And then the weird thing is about the sacred texts, like the Bible, the Quran, or the Torah, is you don't put them in your references page. Because when it's in this format, book, chapter, verse, pretty much everybody on the planet, even non-believers or atheists or professors or wherever you are, they're going to understand that this comes from a sacred text. So you don't put it in your references page, you just use the parenthetical notation for those. And then this is our new library website. You can see much of the information is the same, it's just in a different format, a little bit prettier. So there's Mr. Jeffrey Broderick, he's our library director, and our contact information. This is me, my name is Erin Hubner, I'm a student services librarian, and I do speak Spanish. So if you have a question that you can't quite formulate in English, or you'd prefer to just communicate in Spanish, I can answer your questions in Spanish or English. And then you see the hours, which are outdated right now, but the current website has the correct hours, and those will be changing again as soon as the regular fall semester on campus starts, but that's where you can see our regular operating hours. And there's a link to the catalog, a link to the databases page, and a link to the writing lab through Grace, which has links to all kinds of writing information and resources that could be helpful to you in your research. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is stop the recording and answer some questions. I see that the chat window is pretty active. So let me just stop this recording and then